people come to me because they want someone to be objective, who knows the law, to stand in their shoes and to fight when, they would otherwise break down and cry.
Hello and welcome to the Attorney Post, where we bring you the inside baseball scoop from top legal experts across the country. I'm your host, Justin West. All right. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back again to the Attorney Post podcast, where we discuss what's going on in various facets of the law with lawyers at the top of their game to help you navigate the ins and outs of the various legal fields and jurisdictions. Because as I always say, if you don't know your rights, you don't have any. Today, I'm joined with Christina McKinnon. She runs the eponymous law firm that bears her name, McKinnon Legal, down there in South Florida. Christina, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you, Justin? Thank you for having me. Happy
I'm
holidays.
Doing great. Happy holidays. We are in the few days before Christmas here. This will be my final episode of the year probably. So this will be our Christmas special with Christina. So we might go a little bit longer and dig a little bit deeper in this particular episode. As always, we're going to jump over and take a look at Christina's site first. This is McKinnon Legal. That's mckinnon-legal.com. She specializes particularly in marital law and family law, child custody, divorce, etc. But she also does do personal injury as well. If you have any questions, you can call her law firm at 305-416-0045. As always, link in the description and phone number down in the description as well. Do feel free to reach out to her. You can book an appointment online and take a look at her website. Before we get started, as usual, we're also going to run over and read a couple of our sponsors here. Our first sponsor is nationalerc.org. Let's see, you may have noticed that the world went through a pandemic and many businesses were forced to shut down or reduce their hours and add supply chain interruptions. And ultimately, they suffered from reduced revenue in 2020 and 2021. What you may not know is that Congress recently passed the CARES Act, which allocated $400 billion in stimulus funds for small businesses that never needs to be paid back. This is not a loan like the PPP or Paycheck Protection Program. This is free money for your business that can be spent in whatever way you want that you think makes the most sense for your business. Right now, nationalerc.org is helping small businesses get the maximum amount of money that they can, and you can calculate and see how much you can get by visiting nationalerc.org. The average small business that we work with gets over $200,000 to invest in their business however they see fit that never needs to be paid back. The calculator is free, and there's never a fee unless they are successful in getting funding for you. That's nationalerc.org. And our second sponsor today is Groove Funnels. If you're like me, maybe you hate, maybe you love spending $5,000 to build a new website. Maybe you love, spending $60, $80, $100, $200 a month to host and do security and all that stuff. And if you like all that stuff, then by all means, keep doing whatever it is that you're doing. But if you're like me, you hate that stuff. And that's why I personally recommend Groove Pages, the all-new, all-in-one funnel website sales platform from internet marketing legend Mike Filsaime. Visit theattorneypost.com/groove to sign up for free and build a complete site at no cost, legitimately, really at no cost. Super easy to build, drag and drop, responsive, mobile. You can set up webinars, you can take orders and do all sorts of stuff. There's really no cost. And you can build, I believe, up to 3 fully functional websites at theattorneypost.com/groove. They have a huge list of apps for the platform. It's kind of a Swiss Army knife that replaces a lot of the various platforms you want to be using, from your mail platform to a ClickFunnels type service, etc. So visit theattorneypost.com/groove to get started today. And yes, it really is free, no credit card required. All right, back to Christina. Well, Christina, how are you doing today?
Pretty good.
Awesome. Well, Christina is, as I said before, the founding attorney of McKinnon Legal, the law firm that bears her name. And she's also their primary attorney of a growing law firm down there. And you guys have multiple attorneys working with you now. Your legal career began in labor and employee relations in the healthcare industry, but you realized that you had a calling in helping individuals as they face some of life's biggest challenges, which of course would include, amongst other things, divorce, family law, sorts of issues, and of course, personal injury as well. So why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about your journey and who you are and what you do?
Well, my journey started, I want to go way back. It started when I was about 7, actually. I was always that star child that, excelled in school, would debate my older sister and brothers. And, I have four siblings. I'm the youngest of five. And, I had to come up with some pretty persuasive arguments to be, seen and heard. So, it was maybe, destined for me to be a lawyer. But around that time, I started thinking, hey, this would be a great career for me. When I got to middle school, I was the captain of the debate team and captain of the chess club. And every decision I made was because I'm going to be a lawyer, right? Didn't really know what that meant. Went to law school, thought that I would be a public interest lawyer, helping people that were less fortunate, giving them access to the courts, people that would not otherwise be able to afford going before the courts and being able to pay the enormous sum and sometimes unbearable sum. A lot of my clients have to go into debt to afford to finance their cases. However, during my last year in law school, I took a family law clinic where we actually tried cases before actual judges, general magistrates, and I loved it. I didn't know exactly what that would entail other than my other cohorts or peers and colleagues in my classrooms. But I love the content. I love the subject matter. Once I got out into the real world, I found how stressful, how exhilarating, how rewarding it could be. And I loved it. I like to say, in some twisted sense, you have to love family law because you go through a rigmarole of emotions. People come to you, really good people come to you on their worst day in their lives. To be able to make those crooked and broken places straight, that's what I get out of it. I work for the children. I've always said that I work for the children, not for the parents. So, as a divorce and custody lawyer, my number one job is to make sure that the children are in a better place and that all parties are able to move on.
All right, that makes a lot of sense. So who would you say your primary clientele is? Is it, if I can ask this question, is it mostly men? Is it mostly women? Is it kind of just a good admixture of both?
Yeah,
Who are the people that seek you out the most, and how do they find you?
it's a healthy mix of men and women. I would say probably more men at this point in my career, a more established clientele than it has been in the first part of me starting a firm. As of this year, it's been my 18th year in business. So in 2004, I would represent working class folks. Now it's more professionals, doctors, lawyers, dentists. That's my clientele.
Okay, that's awesome. Um, we're going to dig into the custody stuff here in a little bit because I think that's something that a lot of people have a lot of questions over, and I've got some questions we're going to dig in. But we're going to keep it a little more general at the beginning here, just because I want to ask some just some basic questions. One of my favorite questions, though, is, and I just read about the National ERC, which is one of our sponsors, which of course references the pandemic. Obviously, we all just got through going through a pandemic. Hopefully, I think we're mostly done with it now. But I've talked to a lot of attorneys in a lot of different areas, and a lot of people were affected in a lot of different ways by this pandemic, including the way that they were able to practice law. How did going through the pandemic affect you, your practice of law, and your clients?
Um, I think, it isolated me a little more. I love being around my team and around my clients. We were a year and a half basically at home. We divvied out laptops to all of our staff, and we were able to keep going without a hitch. We were able to pivot pretty quickly. I think it was March 13th, 2020. It was a Friday the 13th, actually, when we heard about it. And a colleague of mine was saying, well, what are you going to do with your daughter? I go, what are you talking about? They're like, they're shutting down the schools. I was like, what? And there we were, we're closed. So, um, but what happened was, our business started booming as a
Mhm.
result of a lot of the pain, a lot of the trauma, and maybe anxiety and panic that people were going through as well. Couples that were shuttered together realized that at this point, yes, we're understanding that we don't work and we need to consciously uncouple and make this a better place for our kids. So our business did grow substantially in 2020 and 2021 and on into 2022. We were also able to handle cases all throughout the state because everything was online. Everything was on Zoom video, whether it was WebEx or what's the other one, all of the video channels that they have out. So I was doing court in any county. There's 67 counties in the state of Florida, but any county from the Panhandle down to Key West, I could handle cases. We were able to help so many people, but not for the sake of earning more money. I always believe that your financial aptitude or the revenues of a firm will be directly correlated and tied to the number of people that you help. So because we were helping so many people move on past a bad situation or get their kids back in their lives or get the support that they needed or get the fees that they needed to be able to litigate a case against a partner with unlimited resources, we reap the fruits of being able to help a tremendous amount of people over the last 3 years.
Gotcha. I'm curious about that. You said you help people get the fees. I know that obviously attorneys aren't cheap. But what does that usually entail for somebody that comes to you and they have a hard time paying? Maybe they're not the money earning spouse. I know you said most of your
Right.
clientele tend to be, doctors and lawyers and stuff, but obviously there's people on all ends of the spectrum. So can you talk about that a little bit? Because I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, absolutely. So there may be a spouse that was a stay-at-home mom, and they weren't the moneyed spouse.
Mhm.
And they may have financed their initial retainer on a credit card. But beyond that, if the fees went over the retainer, I had to go to the court, ask the judge for the attorney's fees, give a complete rundown on the financial affidavits of what the husband makes versus what the wife makes, and it's a need and ability to pay analysis. So the wife has this need. She was always supported by the husband. There were 30 years of marriage. She's been taken out of the workforce. The husband makes 30 times more than the wife. This is warranted, and this is why. There has to be an evidentiary hearing on any type, whether it's alimony, whether it's child support, or whether it's an attorney's fee. It's just another issue in the case. Just because you aren't the moneyed spouse, don't think that you won't have access to a good private lawyer. There are ways around that. Certainly, we do require that initial retainer deposit. I firmly believe that everybody should have skin in the game
Mhm.
when they are coming to a learned professional to represent them in a matter that has stakes this high. But certainly, we can get all of that recouped. It's up to the judge, certainly. After the equitable distribution of assets, the judge may determine, that you have enough assets that you can certainly pay your own attorney's fees. But more often than not, it's another issue in the case, just like any other issue of support, need an ability to pay analysis, and we can get your fees as well.
Gotcha. I actually was not aware of that. Is that
Yeah.
you? That's not unique to Florida, I'm assuming, but is that across the board everywhere? Do you know? Or I mean, I know you're not
Um,
barred everywhere, but
I do believe that most states have a request or a claim of action or cause of action for attorney's fees. It's not just winner pays all or
Mhm.
loser pays all, but in the court of equity, which is family court, um, you do an analysis on what the actual needs are. If there is a discrepancy or disparate income, as the statute says, then more likely than not, the court will give an award.
Gotcha. Okay. You learn something new every day. That's kind of neat. Okay, I'm going to ask you the tough question right now. So get ready for it. As my listeners know, some of my favorite questions to ask. I'm a firm believer you can learn a lot about somebody by how they handle success and also how they handle failure. And having practiced law for 18 years, I'm sure you've hit some major home runs, and I'm sure you've hit some major roadblocks too. We'll start with the negative side. Can you tell our listeners about one of the biggest setbacks or frustrations or losses that you've experienced? But also, I'm a firm believer that there's no failure that's really a failure as long as you learn from it.
Right.
So let our listeners know about a time when you experienced some sort of a failure or setback in your career, but also what you learned from it and how you carry that forward to help your clients now and in the future.
Right. A lot of attorneys take on the emotions and feelings of their clients. So, my whole philosophy is or belief is that people come to me because they want someone to be objective, who knows the law, to stand in their shoes and to fight when, they would otherwise break down and cry. So it's my job to read the law, interpret the law, and persuasively argue the law to the judge. There are instances where I would say family lawyers can be some of the worst in the bar. We have criminal defense lawyers, we have civil lawyers, we have corporate lawyers, but there's a saying here, at least in Florida, that nobody is as acrimonious and as contentious as a family lawyer. I've always aspired not to be one of those family lawyers, but there was one occasion where a particular honorary opposing counsel got under my skin,
Mm.
and I lost my cool with him. That happened one time, and I wasn't too proud of myself afterwards. But in passionately arguing and advocating for my client, I wouldn't say I took on my client's emotions in that instance, but sometimes you snap back, and in that particular time I did, and I was a younger lawyer. So yes, I learned from it. Your reputation is the one thing that it takes a long time to build and a very, very short time to tear down. So, something that I value is having a good reputation. And that's something that would never occur again. But it's very tempting when you practice family law.
I mean, we're all human at the same time, but absolutely. Well, you've clearly done a good job. I might show this up on the screen later, but you guys have 52 reviews on Google alone, and you're averaging like a 4.6, which is really, really good. That means those are real reviews and lots of people singing your praises. So clearly you're doing it well. So let's ask the flip side of that coin. Tell our listeners about one or two of your cases that you're most proud of, the feathers in the cap, so to speak, right? So,
Sure,
maybe
absolutely.
it's even a case you didn't think you were going to win, and then oh man, you not only did you win it, you knocked it out of the park, right?
Yeah.
Give us a couple of those.
Yeah, I mean, this was a very long, arduous case. We had a case for about 4 years, and it spanned across about four divisions, actually three divisions of the court. So we had the family law case, we had a domestic violence case, and we had a dependency case. This is where the Department of Children and Families goes in and, terminates the rights or restricts access to one or both of the parents. So we got the case post judgment. Parties were already divorced. They had an equal time sharing arrangement. The mother didn't want dad to have access to the child, although
Mm.
he had 50-50 time sharing. And she absconds with the child and moves to the UK.
Oh,
So we get retained. We bring the kid back to Florida, which is, a process in and of itself. And we get here, we go back into family court, get mom held in contempt. And then the allegations start. These allegations were sexual in nature, that dad was
mm.
sexually abusing the child, which wasn't true, of course. DCF, Department of Children and Families, didn't find any wrongdoing. She made a second allegation, no wrongdoing. A third investigator, new investigator, comes on board. She makes the allegation, and they have a finding, right? Nothing substantial, but this person had a difference of opinion. So we go through a termination of parental rights trial, which takes about 2.5 years in and of itself. This father almost quit, almost said, "Hey, let me just surrender my rights. I don't want to fight this woman." The child was, I want to say, 3 years old. This will be the rest of, my life fighting this woman. We
Yeah.
encouraged him, stay the course. We won the trial. Of course, he gets his kid back, but we go back to equal time sharing. No, I don't think so. We go back into family court and we get a modification. of the time sharing arrangement, the original time sharing arrangement, and dad is now the majority time sharing parent, and mom has her access restricted because of just the unthinkable things that she said, the allegations she made, the false memories that she implanted in her kid by
Mhm.
saying, oh, these things happened to you. You need to say this, you need to say that, when none of those things ever occurred.
Yeah.
So, in tandem with the dependency case and the family case, there was a domestic violence case because she went in and filed an injunction on behalf of the child to keep dad away. So, we had to defeat that all at the same time. So, I think that's one of my most rewarding cases. Like I said, there were a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in that case. The dad and his family became really good friends of mine. His parents were pastors, and we cried, we prayed, and it was one of those this is what makes it all worth it type of cases. So yeah, that would be my greatest success. And that's three cases wrapped up in one.
I was gonna say you're swinging for the fences on that. That is impressive, and I don't even. I guess I have too much faith in people. I hate to even think that these things happen, but I know
Mhm.
that they do, and then you have to encounter them on a regular basis. That
Oh
has
yeah.
to be. Let me ask you this. This isn't a prescriptive question, but I'm sure that has to be one of the things that's most draining about what you do sometimes too. Like, does it ever just like take it out of you when you see people act in these ways, or are you able to just kind of dispassionately look at it as an objective viewer and just say, well, this is just how this case is? Because I feel like I would
Right.
start to lose my faith in humanity.
Right. I mean, 18 years in, I have learned to step back and, be a little bit more objective. Certainly when I was a younger lawyer, yes, I would take it home with me every day. I, would get so angry at, the thought of um, something happening to a child, whether it was corporal punishment, excessive corporal punishment. And I've seen cases where, kids had cigarette lighters, let out on them. I've seen, kids being raped vaginally and anally. Those are the cases that, you really take home with you. So I can't say that there is anything I haven't seen or heard at this point in my
Yeah.
career. I mean, everything. I mean, 2 years ago, I said that and I said, except a bigamist. And then one walked in my office and I was like, oh, okay, now I've seen it all. So I have seen it all. So yeah, it is what I do. I try to take a step back, look at the facts, analyze the law, and come up with the best arguments, in conformity with the law, and ethically advocate on behalf of my client, and certainly passionately. I love what I do. I love persuading the judges. And of course, you have to have a good relationship in the community, not only
Mhm.
with colleagues, but with judges. And, some of my best colleagues, we can duke it out and, fight to the death in court and then go and have a cup of coffee afterwards. So, it is it is fun for me to be able to get a good result for my client. And I think I was just meant to do it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Um, so let me ask you this. I'm sure people always have misconceptions about what you can do and what you can't do. Maybe they come to you and they think you're just the fixer, and in 2 weeks or less, everything's going to be magic, right? What are some of the biggest misconceptions people bring into your office, and how do you help them get past those misconceptions and understand the reality on the ground?
Right. I mean, if they have an unreasonable expectation, that, hey, I want 100% time sharing, um, if the person's not a drug dealer, axe murderer, or, um, some violent criminal, they're going to have access to their child. So I have to sort of manage expectations in that regard, is that, hey, there will be a parenting plan and there'll be shared time. However, if you could show me something that is actually detriment to the child, then we can use that. There's a series of factors that the court, like I said, it's a court of equity. Court of equity just means that the court wants to do what's fair, and they want to do what is in the best interest of both parties and for the children. So we have about 20 factors in the custody statute where I say, okay, this person is more likely than not to be the one that knows the child's routine, does the homework, can keep bedtimes, knows the teachers, will go to parent teacher conferences, all of those things, you know. However, this parent, can take them to the after, school games, extracurricular activities. Those are the weighing of factors where I use to persuade the judge, the type of parenting plan that I want. I have to argue the law. I have to do it in a legal, ethical way. I can't argue something that is outside of the law. I let them know that something that's illegal, something that is unethical. Those are the parameters that, I try to build that sort of expectation right at the onset with every single client. I don't think that hiding assets, dissipating assets, making fraudulent transfers, if you tell me that that's what you're going to do, I have to, dissuade you from doing it. Um, those are the things that me as an objective, candid professional, have a duty of candor to the court, um, that I'm going to represent this person with integrity. Mhm.
Gotcha. Um, all right, so let's dig into some of the questions about child custody, because I know this is an area that's, again, I have to assume it's one of the hardest areas that you have to deal with. Probably, again, one of the most rewarding. You said at the end of the day, you're working for the children, right? So
Mhm.
this really is kind of the heart of what it is that you do. What would you say is the most important thing for, a couple, for parents to consider when they are navigating a child custody dispute?
Mhm. I would say their children's emotional and mental health, right? A lot of, um, how would you say, vendors that I work with are guardians ad litem, who would have to stand in the place of the child, because children can't testify in court.
Mhm.
So they're sort of like an investigator and the voice of the child to the judge, or child therapists. I have lots of therapists on speed dial because I may see a situation where a child is either being alienated or a child is being emotionally abused because, hey, they just want the other parent in their lives.
Yeah.
So, they have to love their kid more than they hate each other. That's, one of the things I always say, and it's posted in one of our judges' courtrooms, actually. So, the mental and emotional health, it's not the material stuff. It's not, who gets what time sharing schedule. It's just, how is this child doing?
Yeah.
I think the most recent thing that's out now is, I'm not sure you've seen the Harry and Meghan documentary on Netflix.
I'm familiar with it, but I've not seen
And
it.
and there is a poem, about, having two households, two parents, two everything, and all they want is, just to be loved. So,
Mhm.
the parents were providing these separate provisions, but it's what came out of it. And I think a lot of family law practitioners are using it all over social media right now. My focus is on that child, and I want to
Mhm.
make sure that the child gets the help that they need, whether through a guardian ad litem or through a therapist.
Gotcha. What do you think parents can do to help their kids cope with that stress that comes from a child custody case?
Sure, certainly. Just let them know that both of them love them. If they can co-parent in an amicable way, they don't have to necessarily be friends, but to the child, not disparage the other, certainly. And let the child know that, hey, they will move on. Perhaps there'll be other people in their lives in the future, but that's just more people that will be able to love them. The most important thing is to let the kid know that it's not their fault. I was talking with a colleague the other day, and he was saying how he was also a child of divorce. And it was so intense and so acrimonious, that, he was just like a volleyball going back and forth from between both parents. And he knew it wasn't about him, but he felt so alone because he didn't
Yeah.
want to offend one parent over the other. However, his whole life, he had intense anxiety issues, he had anger issues, and it wasn't until he was over 40 that he sought some therapy and unpacked it and showed that that's what it came from. It came from at that time. So my job is to get that therapy at the onset so that they don't live their entire lives, you know, unpacking something that their parents started, not thinking about the child, thinking about themselves, being selfish. But here we are, we have a 40-year-old or maybe even 50 or 60-year-olds that were traumatized or were negatively affected during a divorce. And, it affects their lives going forward.
Yeah. I've heard everyone knows the statistic that 50% of marriages end in divorce. I've never actually looked into that before. Do you think that is a true statistic, or does that seem like it's actually inflated a little bit? What do you think?
It's inflated a little bit. It's actually about 40%. So,
Oh,
it's close to half.
yeah, that's still not great, but it's better
Yeah.
than 50, I guess. It's just funny. I come my mom was a single mom. I was an only child of a single mom. My wife comes from a divorced family, so we're one of those. We didn't have that modeling growing up. I think a lot of kids nowadays are growing up in obviously I'm not here to lament all the changes in society, but it's hard to grow up when you don't see like the modeled behavior of this is a husband, this is a wife, and this is how they relate together and whatnot. And I have to assume it does cause like stress, hidden stress, things that people aren't fully aware of, and that maybe they metastasize 20, 30, 40 years later. So
Hmm. Hmm.
anyway, it's a tough thing. So let me ask you more on the financial side, unless you're sorry, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say, and the more marriages you have, they're more likely to get divorced. So, if you
Yeah.
go through a second or a third marriage, you're more like 60% and 70% likely to get a divorce.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of things, and we can talk about this in a minute. In fact, maybe I'll just jump down to that question next. But a lot of times, blended families where you have step parents or secondary step parents and whatnot, those also tend to be the cases where I think you see a lot of, unfortunately, like child abuse and child neglect, because of course the step
Mm.
parent often, not always, but oftentimes just doesn't have that same emotional involvement. How do you handle cases, especially complex cases that involve a family dynamic with step parents, with extended family members, grandparents, aunts, uncles, etc.? How often is that an issue, and how do you handle that?
Um, Let me just ask a clarifying question. So is it the step parents are involved in the divorce, or we're doing the step parent divorce, or the grandparents are seeking some sort of temporary custody because the parents aren't available?
I think more the former than the latter. I don't know how often step parents are a factor even. Maybe they're
Hmm.
almost never a factor, but I have to assume
Hmm.
at least sometimes they are in a custody battle in particular.
I mean, I would
Um,
say it's only if there is an abuse or some sort of, mistreatment of the child, but otherwise it's just the parties before us. So it's, the former husband and former wife's child, and that's who the court will deal with. The new wife won't be a part of it.
okay.
Right. Unless, I think a limited issue, and this comes very few and far between, neither parent can force another, person to or can have that person force the child to call them mommy or daddy, right? So that's only reserved for
Mm.
two people. So that's the biggest issue where we dealt with step parents. But unless there's some issue of abuse or, some sort of neglect or mistreatment, they're really not a party to the case, so I don't deal with them.
Okay, that makes sense. How do you make sure your clients are aware of the potential, financial implications of a child custody battle, whether they're the primary breadwinning spouse or the non-breadwinning spouse? I'm sure there's lots
Hmm.
of different considerations that come into play there.
Hmm. Well, when a client retains my office, the first thing I do is, hey, what does a post-divorce time sharing arrangement look like to you? Right. And we go through all of the factors from decision making to what the weekends are, what the weekdays are, what the vacations would look like, the summers, the Christmases, or the winter break, because everybody doesn't celebrate Christmas, but um what the itinerary would be if you're going to be traveling domestically or internationally, those types of things. Will you
Mhm.
cooperate on the passport? What about the Monday holidays, right? So you got Labor Day, Memorial Day, you got Martin Luther King Day, it's in conjunction with someone's weekend. So, there's no school the next day. So do I get that Monday? It comes down to the bare bones. We've even got people that, may or may not be Jewish or may not celebrate Kwanzaa, but hey, those are other holidays that are on the calendar. I want those days just so that they
Yeah.
can get more days for, jockeying for position, jockeying for overnights. So that's what we deal with. And I'll draft up a 12 to 15 page parenting plan, send it over to opposing counsel, and then the negotiation starts, right? So the best thing, and I tell all of my clients that your best day in court is an agreement that you and your soon to be former spouse come up with yourselves, right? Because if we have to try this case, hey, we'll argue to the hilt for you on your behalf, but you take it out of your own hands and you put it in the hands of a judge that doesn't know you,
Yeah.
right? And they are going to follow the law. They're going to listen to the facts. They're going to listen to detriment, listen for out for detriment. If they don't find detriment, they may just split the baby down the middle. And, you don't want it for this reason, that reason, and the other. And, the other person may be trying to take the kid from you, but neither one of you are going to get what you want if it goes before a judge. So this could be a long drawn out $20,000 case. And the only issue that we've resolved there is custody. That doesn't resolve your equitable distribution issues, your alimony claim, your attorney's fees claim, if there's a business, the dissolution of the business. So there are very hard conversations that I must have about, okay, this is how long this could be. So maybe, you may want to rethink this, or maybe you want to be a little bit more amicable with the other side so that you get more of what you want.
Mhm.
And they realize it. Somewhere around year 5 after the divorce, they all become friends again anyway. So
Yeah. You have to cooperate with them. You got to get the
no,
carpools
but they're
down,
over it.
and
They're
now that
over
they're
it.
over it and the emotions have cooled. Let me ask you about asset division. I know that we were talking about that a little bit before we started recording this. I think one of the most famous ones, obviously, is Jeff Bezos. His wife is one of the richest women in the world because he started his company after they were married,
Mhm.
and so she basically was entitled to half of the Amazon fortune. How does that all play out in Florida law, and what sorts of things do you tell your clients to be prepared for when it comes to dividing up an asset like a business, or
Right. I mean,
other difficult to divide assets?
right. I mean, the first question I ask when they come into our office is there a prenup or a prosunup? Right.
Mm.
So they may have started this after the date of the marriage, but it may not necessarily be marital if there's a postnuptial agreement that says, okay, well, I'm starting this business with non-marital funds and, you're waiving your right to it. They could also waive their right to alimony. That may not be an issue in the divorce, although they are the money spouse and the income is so disparate by the time that they get divorced. Hey, you signed this freely and voluntarily and you were given full disclosure. So um one of the things that I would tell a spouse is make sure you know what the financial implications are. So usually when there's two people and there's disparate income, one person handles all the money and the other person just benefits from the increased lifestyle, right? They don't really know a full survey of what's out there. And it could have been years of hiding and transferring assets. And, we may or may not be able to find them. That's where it can get very expensive, in hiring a forensic accountant to find those things for us to testify at trial as an expert, and to basically punish the other side and show that we should have an unequal distribution of assets because of this misbehavior. So those are the things I tell my clients, with respect to equitable distribution, as well as equitable distribution of a business or dissolution of a business if we have to dissolve it. Sometimes that is the case if there are partners in the business may not want to pay out the wife or have the wife on as a partner. So it's dissolved and the other three partners, can go on and start something new. But yeah, those are the things that I want to know. That's actually the fun part to me, so there's the emotional part with the kids and the custody and the divorce and, the tears. And then there's the empirical part, and it's all equitable distribution tables and charts and math and all the stuff that I really love. Right. So that's the nerd in me. And that's the part that I come alive on, to tell you the truth. So yeah.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Unleash your inner math nerd. Well, Christine, I want to thank you first off for spending some time with us, and I'm going to be respectful of your time and not keep you all afternoon. So here in a minute, I'm going to ask you one or two more fun questions, and I'll give those to you beforehand so you can think about them, and then we'll jump over and take a look at your site again before we come back. Question number one is going to be, if you can go back in time and give young Christina some advice. What advice would you give yourself getting started, like fresh out of law school, that maybe you wish you would have known going into into the practice? Which, of course, by extension, what advice would you give to a brand new law student, green behind the gills, fresh out of law school? And then my second question is this: my longtime listeners know this is my magic pen, and this magic pen allows you to edit laws on the books. You can add a new law in that you want to see. You can strike a law from the books right now, and it could be a major law that has nationwide sweeping ramifications. It can be a minor law that forces you to fill out forms in triplicate 12 times a week, right? So whatever law you want, or you can just edit a law and make a little change. I want you to think about that, because I'm going to give you my pen in a minute. We're going to see what you change. But
Okay.
before we do that, we're going to jump over and take a look again at your site. As always, this is McKinnon-Legal, McKinnon-Legal.com. If you're listening, link should be in the description of the video or the podcast, wherever you're watching this right here. And again, as always, she has information up here. You can book an appointment to talk with her. You can give them a phone call. That is 305-416-0045. I'm talking with Christina McKinnon of the McKinnon Law Firm. I'm going to jump over one more time and read from our last sponsor. This one is close to home because this is my own company, Rank with News. And then we'll come right back. So if there was a guaranteed way for you to get your law firm or your business featured in major news publications like Yahoo News, Forbes, Bloomberg, and other major channels, and then see those articles rank locally, sometimes in under 8 hours on page one of Google for major competitive keywords that people were looking for, what else would you need to know? Rank with News is simply the most powerful way to hit page one of Google, guaranteed, often in under 2 weeks, and to do it safely, quickly, and permanently. This is essentially guaranteed SEO, or search engine optimization, on steroids. Visit rankwith.news to learn more and to book a time to speak with yours truly or one of our specialists about featuring your firm or your business in major national 8-figure traffic that can help launch you to page one of Google in a matter of hours and help you dominate your local marketplace. Rank faster, rank smarter, rank with news. All right. That's my company. So question number one, we're going to come back over here, Christina, and we're going to travel back in time, and we're going to meet a young Christina fresh out of law school. What advice, other than, of course, buy a lot of Bitcoin, trust me, hold it till it's like 65, 70K, it'll get there, right? Other than that is obvious advice, right? What advice are you going to give yourself fresh out of law school?
Invest early. You can't beat the 30 or 40 years that you have ahead of you of investing, and the benefit that will be giving you at age 50 by the time you're my age. And the second thing would be, don't play small. For a long time it was me and a legal assistant. That's it. And I was a solo practitioner, and we did everything. I mean, those are the best times. I was so thrilling, and I had a wonderful time. But now we're a team of 13, and all I do is go to court. I have all my pleadings prepared. Of course, as the attorney, I review everything and make sure that it's legally sound and it has my stamp of approval on it. I do my research, I prepare my testimony questions, and I hold my client's hands, right? So my job is to attend to the client, but the office work, I have legal assistants, a team of legal assistants, paralegals, a billing clerk, a salesperson, and attorneys that are in the office, and they're helping me run this machine that brings, healing and value to so many people and more people. So over time, every single year, we help more people than we helped the year before. So don't play small, never play small. You're not going to accomplish your purpose or have the biggest impact that your purpose, can bring into the world.
Go big or go home. That's good advice for anybody. So if you're listening right now, give us a thumbs up if you think that's good advice, because I think that's sound. And it's legal advice too. So there you go. All right, question number 2. I'm going to give you my magical pen right here through the
Okay. All
power of
right.
Zoom. You've now
I
got
got
my
it.
magical pen.
I got it.
You can change any law you want. Big law, little law, local law, national
Hmm.
law. You can strike it from the books. You can add a new one in, or you can edit an existing law. What are you going to
Right.
change, Christina, and why?
It would be the paternity statute, right, in the state of Florida. So, in the paternity statute, it's basically that the father of a child born out of wedlock basically has no rights until he files a circuit court action to get a parenting plan and access to the child. So a lot of time I have these young men come into my office and they're like, oh, my kid's 9 years old and everything was fine. And then she stopped letting me see him, or she moved to North Dakota,
Mm.
wherever. She's well within her right. She can do it based on Florida law because, they weren't married. And, there's a guardianship statute that says the mother of an unborn child is the natural guardian of the child, right? So if he never filed a paternity action to have legal paternity established, he may be biologically connected to the child. He may have given the child his last name and signed off on the birth certificate. He may have held himself out to the world as, this child's father, but it doesn't really mean a hell of beans when it comes to our circuit court. So, it's unfair and it's archaic. I think in the state of Georgia and other states, Florida, I still consider the South. So they call it a legitimization hearing. So, I mean, I can't fathom anybody calling any child illegitimate,
Mhm.
So in 2022, going into 2023, we need to dispel with the notion that, children are illegitimate. And basically, although we call it a paternity action, it's the same law and it needs to be wiped from our books.
All right. So you're going to strike it right out.
Abolished.
Abolished. Boom. Gone. All right. Well, Christina, I want to thank you again very much for taking the time to talk with me today. I'm sure my listeners have learned a lot. I've enjoyed this conversation greatly. I always like to let my guest have the final word. Do you have any parting thoughts, words of wisdom or advice that you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Well, you know what? You're not your best self unless you take care of your mental health. That is most importantly. So whether you're in a marriage that ended a long time ago and you're still there, you're not doing yourself any favors or doing justice for your kids, from them seeing a stressful, constantly fighting and bickering, that type of situation, unless you both heal. I, as a mother, as a wife, as an attorney, certainly have to take care of myself first and make sure that I'm at my optimal, you know, mental state, that I am at my best every single day, or I wouldn't be able to represent my clients in the best way that I can. I wouldn't be the best mother to my daughter or provide my husband with the support and love that he needs. So it may sound selfish, but I'm number one. That is my parting word. And I say that to all of my clients. And typically, you know, they break down and start crying. You know what? That's true. And that's what it's all about. So whether we are doing a paternity action and we're getting your kids back in your life, you still have to be the best dad that you need to be, right? Let this anger pass. Whether we are getting you a new home after 30 years of being a stay-at-home mom and out of the workforce and getting you alimony and child support and all of these things, You've got to be able to be independent and, be strong enough to and healthy enough to move on in a new direction. The past is the past. It's just, something there that's going to make us depressed. So look to the future. That's one of our taglines, is that we secure your futures. And we're a forward thinking firm. So yeah, I would say my parting word is take care of your mental health, take care of your emotional health, and everything else will be easier to endure.
Absolutely. Even what do they say? Even Mother Teresa had to stop and eat before she could take care of everyone else that was out there. So you got to take care of yourself. I think that's great advice.
Mhm.
Well, Christina, thank you very much for meeting with us today. As always, this is the Attorney Post. I've been chatting with attorney Christina McKinnon of the eponymous law firm that bears her name, McKinnon Legal, McKinnon-legal.com, link in the description down below. If you, as always, this podcast does not itself constitute, I know I joked a minute ago, but it does not constitute legal advice, even though I've been talking with an attorney. If you have a legal issue, you should always seek the advice of a competent attorney in your area who focuses on the matter that you need help with. Obviously, if you're in the South Florida area and you've got a family law, divorce, custody dispute, or personal injury, it sounds like Christina is an amazing resource, and I would strongly recommend you pick up the phone and at least reach out to her, talk to her, and start figuring out what your rights are. Because again, as I always say, if you don't know your rights, you don't have any. This is Justin West. You've been listening to The Attorney Post. As always, if you're listening to this on YouTube, we always appreciate a like, a subscribe, and a share. If you're listening to this on any other podcasts that are out there, Apple, Stitcher, Amazon, Spotify, whatever it happens to be, feel free to like us, rate us, comment, whatever it is that they allow you to do on that that platform. And until next time, again, if you don't know your rights, you don't have any. Have a safe and happy holidays, everybody, and we'll be back in the new year. Bye-bye.
Thank you.